Hello, everyone. I am back after a bout of fighting with COVID, but these last few days I've been playing the new Warhammer 40k RPG, Rogue Trader, and man, do I want to talk about it. I have now played it for about 32 hours, give or take an hour, and I feel that I'm in a pretty good spot to give you my initial thoughts on the game. So I do want to get a couple of caveats out of the way up front, and that is that I'm, if anything, a casual enjoyer of the 40k universe. I've never played the tabletop, nor do I own any minis, although I do know some people that have done both. I've never read any of the books, but I have played a good deal of the Warhammer games over the years. And with that said, um, let's talk about Rogue Trader. Aside from anything else, this is a deep RPG where the game lets you play the role of a dogmatic follower of the Emperor, an iconoclastic defender of people, or a heretical, power hungry despot. The game uses a modified version of the Warhammer 40k roleplay system and the Rogue Trader sourcebooks, so if you have played or are familiar with those systems, the game will be very familiar to you. My understanding is that this is a heavily modified version of the traditional rules. So if you do love and have played the roleplay system before, that's definitely something you should keep in mind. The game offers what I think is frankly an amazing level of documentation that includes hyperlinks within conversations so that you can look up particular words or definitions that you might not remember off the top of your head. It can make it really easy to keep up with conversations where they're mentioning some esoteric term that you've never heard of before. If it's not already apparent, this is a deep RPG, as I said, and it allows you to play many different roles. In the game keeps track of your iconoclastic, dogmatic, or heretical choices, and it has a ranking system for these choices. Once you reach rank 3 on the system, the progression on the other two paths will become blocked, and the other one becomes your main path. And it mostly works fine, but you will find on occasion that you can switch between being dogmatic or being heretical within the same conversation without any issues. As far as the way that the conversation is going, which feels a little bit artificial and weird, but really, I mean, this is not any different than it might be in other games. When you start the game, you can either create your own custom character or choose to go with one of the pre-built ones. Initially, you can pick out an initial archetype of soldier, operative, warrior, and officer. Each one has sort of a different emphasis on weapon combat, squad abilities, psyker abilities. If you're new to 40k, psychers are basically magic users. There's a caveat that when psychers use their powers, they might go insane or turn into a monster, or they could manifest monsters into reality. So do keep that in mind when you're using their powers. There is really a lot to read in terms of character abilities and potential. If you enjoy reading every single possible character upgrade and meticulously crafting the most broken and OP character possible, you have a fertile field of possibility here. I have crafted characters that can renew their actions multiple times in a turn and practically devastate an opposing force before they even have time to blink. And I've also created some that seemingly miss every single shot they fire. If you do screw up a character, though, not to worry. You simply need to chat with your high factotum on your ship, and you just let them know that you and your retinue are in need of training. And from here, you can select any of your characters and reset their progress, such that they will keep their experience, and then it's simply a matter of re-rolling everything. This basically lets you respec and experiment easily with different builds, which is great. And there's tons and tons of different builds, I'm sure. The combat system is going to feel familiar if you played any turn-based tactical game in the past. Generally works as you'd expect. The game doesn't really hold your hand too much as far as the weapons are concerned, so it's really up to you to read up on your weapon and figure out how to best use it. Most weapons are very sensitive to their operating range, and making shots at extreme close range or extreme far range are going to result in wild inaccuracy. And you might think a weapon sucks, but really you just need to get into the correct range. Burst shots in particular can be just as dangerous to your own troops as to your enemy if you're not careful. But with that said, once you get a feel for how the weapons work in the game, you're generally not going to have much problem. Overall, I found combat to be fun, but not particularly challenging. My characters have become quite strong over the 30 hours that I played. I've generally had a relatively easy time with combat, even against elite enemies. You really just need to pay attention to your fire arc, your weapon range, and you'll be fine. Aside from the tactical combat, there's also a bit of ship-to-ship combat. I found this exercise to be serviceable, but not really all that interesting, which is unfortunate, given that there's a lot of attention that's paid to your void ship, including equipment slots, upgrades, and assigning officers from your retinue to various crew positions in order to gain specific ship or access to specific ship maneuvers. Even so, ship-to-ship combat pales in comparison to the action on the ground. Generally was something I wanted to get over with rather than enjoy playing through. It's not that it's bad exactly, but it just hasn't been that interesting, and if it wasn't there, I probably wouldn't miss it. I suspect it's mainly there because it's part of the Warhammer 40k roleplay Rogue Trader system, but who knows. Although the game overall is a pleasure to play, it is plagued by various operational bugs that will occasionally have you screaming at your screen. My advice is to remember to save often. There are some fights that seem to be more prone to these sorts of problems than others, but maybe it was my system in particular, who knows. But I've had multiple instances where I had to quit out of the game and then reload because the UI became unresponsive, or because a fight stopped in mid-progress, and you just get stuck waiting for it to continue. The game is still responsive, and you can navigate the menus and look at things and etc. But basically, the fight is frozen, and you just can't move progress. You just can't move forward. One other thing to note is that even with the games installed onto an SSD, I found loading screens to be quite long and sometimes taking 30 seconds to a minute to load the game or location. Because this is also a game that's similar in depth to Baldur's Gate, you just can't help but compare the two together, but frankly, there's really not much comparison. Baldur's Gate 3 still stands out as being much more organically put together than Rogue Trader. For example, I was in a fight in a room that became flooded with toxic gas, and immediately I was concerned that I was going to ignite it and blow up my entire squad. But in Rogue Trader, it's just not something you have to worry about. The quests in Rogue Trader are more complex than on your average game, and you can come close to the complexity that you see in Baldur's Gate. For example, many quests have different resolutions that can have multiple and varied effects on your gameplay. Siding with different characters on quests will sometimes allow you to bring different people onto your retinue, and that will elicit different responses from your companion NPCs. That said, I didn't find that these things lasted much more beyond their initial impact in Rogue Trader, whereas NPCs in Baldur's Gate generally constantly remind you of the things that you did to upset them or make them happy. That said, and without going into too many spoilers, there are some exceptions for the major decisions that you make in the game, where your companions will remind you that the choices that you made in the past have directly led to your current situation. Beyond its systems, Rogue Trader also does a great job of bringing the world to life, not only through the graphics, but the audio and the music are also great. Although I wouldn't say that the music reaches the level of brilliance that we saw on Warhammer 40k Mechanicus, it's still an enjoyable listening experience. Much of the game's dialogue is expertly voice acted and goes very far into helping you lose your disbelief and get you settled into the world of 40k. So I would say overall and in conclusion to this first impression is that the game is well worth the price of entry if you enjoy these deep or sort of RPGs and if you enjoy the Warhammer 40k setting. If you don't mind on occasion or even enjoy having to pick between the least worst option rather than a more rosy winning choice that you might get to make in D&D,
She's a cold trader, a smuggler.
you just want to get on with the combat, this game might not be the best fit.
I know of no other.
That said, I'm sure there are already plenty of character builds that are posted online, and you can simply look one up and copy that if that part of the game doesn't appeal to you. And really, that about does it for this first impression. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found it helpful and interesting. I'll catch you on the next one.